She was just a teenager, no older than 19. Catherine was beautiful with auburn hair. She was radiant, impulsive, and dangerously naive. Young Catherine here was harbouring a secret. Not the type of secret you want falling on the ears of the wrong people. The proverbial cat had already been let out of the bag. Unbeknown to Catherine, the scandal had already reached the king's ears. And now, they were coming for her. Strap yourself in, because this gets brutal. And creepy. This is the haunting of Hampton Court Palace. We've got Zog joining us again today, probably for the last time before he goes home, but I am thinking of getting my own bearded dragon, so if you can think of a suitable name, get it down in the comments section. So initially, I was researching Hampton Court as part of an episode about 5 of the most haunted royal residencies, but the more I dug into the history and hauntings of this place, the more I realised this just had to be a standalone episode. There's just so much to unpack. If you haven't already seen the episodes on Windsor Castle and the Tower of London, I'll link them below. Definitely worth a watch. And make sure you stick around till the end of the episode for the hilariously brutal interview with Catherine Howard and her headless lovers. But for now, it's time to get serious. So, in 1514, Cardinal Thomas Wolsey purchased a modest manor house in East Molesey, Surrey. The property is situated on the edge of the River Thames, southwest of central London. Wolsey had a vision for the manor house, which at the time seemed incredibly wild and ambitious. He wanted to renovate the place and turn it into a lavish palace that would entertain and impress royals, nobles, and dignitaries. By the 1520s, Hampton Court Palace was one of the most magnificent buildings in the whole of the United Kingdom. However, in 1529, Wolsey had fallen from favour and was experiencing some... You okay? We good? As I was saying, however, in 1529, Wolsey had fallen from favour and was experiencing some serious political difficulties and decided to gift Hampton Court to none other than King Henry VIII, who would ultimately renovate and extend the palace even further. With King Henry came the drama of 6 wives, executions, adultery, divorces, and countless betrayals, a perfect storm for hauntings. Hampton Court is bloody huge. Oh, Zog, where are you going? I've read a few different articles about the place, and estimates seem to... Jeez. Right, we're going to put Zog back. Right, where were we? Hampton Court is bloody huge. I've read a few different articles about the place, and estimates seem to suggest that there are roughly 1,400 rooms, which is just insane. With this many rooms, the place is quite literally a maze. The perfect layout for ghosts to roam and tourists to get lost in a panic. Now, the quite aptly named Haunted Gallery is a long corridor lined with Tudor portraits, the setting of one of the most chilling ghost stories in British history. Strap yourself in, because this gets brutal. And creepy. Imagine this. The year is 1541. Hampton Court Palace was buzzing with royal life, velvet gowns swishing across polished floors, courtiers whispering secrets in shadowed corners, and at the centre of it all, Queen Catherine Howard, Henry VIII's 5th wife. She was just a teenager, no older than 19. I've read some articles suggesting she was 17, some that she was 18, so let's just play it safe and say she was no older than 19. Catherine was beautiful with auburn hair. She was radiant, impulsive, and dangerously naive. And to top it all off, she was the Queen of England. The real problem was, young Catherine here was harbouring a secret. It was a secret with the power to seal her fate. Not the type of secret you want falling on the ears of the wrong people. Unfortunately for poor Catherine, the proverbial cat had already been let out of the bag. Now let's set the scene. Catherine was pacing nervously back and forth along the long processional gallery, an area we now call the Haunted Gallery, and you're about to find out why. You see, Catherine was well aware that a letter had been intercepted, and the Privy Council had gained knowledge of the contents of said letter. Soon, whispers began to swirl that Catherine had shared more than innocent company with Thomas Culpeper, one of the king's favoured gentlemen. There were also rumours of past indiscretions with her former music tutor, Henry Manox, and Francis Derham, a past lover she may or may not have referred to as her husband. Unbeknown to Catherine, the scandal had already reached the king's ears. And now, they were coming for her. Catherine was in her private chambers at Hampton Court when the guards arrived to seize her. Realising what was about to happen, and also realising in that moment that she will not be granted the opportunity to plead her case, she struggled, wriggled and squirmed until she was finally able to escape the guards' grasp. She burst through the doors from her room into the gallery, frantically running barefoot, screaming for her husband, pleading for mercy. She ran, not like a majestic queen, but like a terrified young girl, down the oak-floored corridor, pounding fists on the door of the Chapel Royal, where her husband, King Henry VIII, was hearing mass. But the guards soon caught up with her, seized her by the arms and dragged her back as she thrashed and kicked and screamed, her fingernails desperately clawing at the walls, her shrieks echoing off the vaulted ceiling. She begged and pleaded to see the king, but she was denied. Whether or not King Henry could hear her cries for mercy is unclear, but if he did hear them, he certainly didn't take any notice, and he certainly wasn't feeling merciful. This was the last time poor Catherine would ever walk those halls freely. That gallery, the very one she ran down, is where her spirit is said to remain, doomed to relive those last desperate moments for eternity. Visitors have reported feeling icy cold rushes, hearing disembodied screams, or seeing a white figure sprinting frantically along the corridor. Catherine was imprisoned in Sion House, and later taken to the Tower of London, where she would await her fate. To make the situation even worse, the evidence against her was starting to mount. Love letters, witness statements, some true, some likely fabricated. With the Privy Council deeming that he had committed no crime, Catherine's former tutor Henry Manox was released. But Thomas Culpeper and Francis Derham were not so lucky. Their fates had already been sealed. The two men stood trial at Guildhall on December 1st, 1541. The charges? High treason, for which the penalty was, of course, death. Thomas Culpeper was the lucky one. He was beheaded at Tyburn as a gathering crowd watched on. Meanwhile, Francis Derham was forced to endure a much more gruelling end. Derham was dragged along the ground, attached to a wooden board pulled through the streets by a horse and cart. Just imagine being pulled along at speed, every stone, every piece of gravel removing chunks of skin, and being completely helpless, totally unable to defend yourself at all. This was the first part of Derham's systematic, physical and mental destruction. With his body battered and bloody and his mind fractured, Derham was set to receive the second part of his punishment. As he lay on the ground, broken, he looked up. His vision blurred at first, but then he saw it. The hangman's noose. Derham was pulled up to his feet and dragged over to the noose, which was placed around his neck. He looked around at the crowd where he saw no mercy. Screams of "hang him" were reverberating among the onlookers. Just as Derham managed to gather his thoughts, the wooden floor beneath him gave away and he dropped. But this was no mercy. There was no quick death from a broken neck. This was to be torture. It was meant to be torture. This was to be brutally and excruciatingly endured. The noose tightened around Derham's neck, long enough to choke him, but not long enough to kill him, and within a few seconds he was released. His body clattered to the ground as he gasped for dear life and choked up blood, desperately clinging to whatever life was left in him. I can't even imagine what he would have been thinking at this point. I mean, when he saw the noose, he probably expected that this was how he would meet his end. So when it hadn't killed him, he must have been absolutely terrified of what was to come. And rightfully so, because if you think that sounded like torture, clearly you haven't heard the true brutality of medieval execution techniques, because the worst was indeed yet to come. Once again, Derham was dragged to his feet, and he was laid on a table where he was to receive the most excruciating part of his punishment. Derham looked up at the sky once more, probably begging God for mercy as his hands and feet were bound to the table. Unable to move, but very much aware of what was going on around him, and very much able to feel the whole ordeal. Derham's clothes were torn away and removed, exposing his bare skin to the onlookers. With a sharp blade in hand, the executioner took Derham's genitals and cut them away like a butcher to an animal. Derham squealed, screamed and squirmed as he endured every horrific second of this barbaric torture. The executioner held up his prize for the crowd to see, but he was far from finished. Next, the razor-sharp blade was plunged deep into Derham's abdomen, with the surgical precision of a pisshead playing pin the tail on the donkey. The cold steel hacked its way through skin and flesh until the entrails beneath were exposed and tugged out of Derham's body as he was very much still alive. It's said that he was fully conscious, fully aware of what was happening to him, although personally, and this is only my opinion, I'm not so sure the human body would allow you to endure that much pain. Surely, the body would just shut down at this point and endure no more. Surely you'd go into a state of shock or something. Am I right? Am I wrong? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, it's said that Derham watched on as he was dissected piece by piece as parts of him were thrown onto a nearby fire. He could literally smell his own body parts burning to ash. Eventually and inevitably, Derham's life did fade away. He closed his eyes and endured no more. Derham was hacked to pieces. His head was decapitated and his body quartered. True William Wallace style. His head was placed on a spike on full public display, right next to Thomas Culpeper's own head. And now, for Catherine. Inside the Queen's apartments at the Tower of London, Catherine Howard, fifth wife of Henry VIII, was not sleeping. I mean, how could she? She was still only a teenager after all, little more than a child. Her execution had been delayed for days, each hour stretching for what felt like an eternity. But now, the waiting was over. The axe was sharpened and the block prepared for her execution. She had begged for mercy, writhed in hysterics when first arrested, screamed when they told her she was to die. But now, in the cold hush before dawn, on February 13th, 1542, she had no tears left to cry. She was just still, broken, resigned to her fate. They say she asked for the execution block the night before so she could practice laying her head upon it. Can you imagine that? A young woman rehearsing her own execution, pressing her cheek to the wood, again and again, whispering the words she might say before the axe falls. Trying to die with dignity, because at this point she'd been told that dying was now her only duty. As dawn broke, the Queen was dressed in a plain black velvet gown, her hair tucked away beneath a hood. She was escorted by Sir John Gage and his guards, who kept their eyes forward, some out of duty, but some because they simply couldn't bear to look at her. The Tower Green was slick with morning dew, and the smell of death hung over it like a poison mist. She stepped into the open courtyard and took in a deep, sharp breath as the cold bit into her bones. To her left, the ominous White Tower loomed. To her right, the dreaded scaffold. And ahead, a sea of eyes watching. Some in judgment, some in pity. Thousands of spectators had gathered in solemn silence. Nobles, courtiers, even servants. Some watched with morbid fascination, others with sorrow, and a few with grim satisfaction. She closed her eyes and her senses heightened as she heard the clinking of armour, every little bit of movement sending a chill down her spine. A woman in the crowd, sobbing quietly, the creak of wooden boards beneath the headman's boots, and somewhere, in the distance, a raven shrieked. But ultimately, the block awaited. Catherine climbed up the steps, unaided. Her hands trembled and her lip quivered, but she held her chin high. A silence fell so deep even the crows seemed to stop and watch. She turned to face the crowd and spoke her final words.
"I die a queen,"
she said, voice low but clear.
"But I would rather die the wife of Culpeper."
It may have been real. It may have been invented later by chroniclers hungry for drama. But what is true is this. She confessed her sins. She acknowledged her faults. And she begged for God's mercy. The executioner stepped forward. His axe gleamed in the grey light. Catherine knelt down and the headsman guided her gently to the block. Her breath steamed in the cold air, as one last tear of sorrow and regret trickled down her soft cheek. She laid her head up on the wood, gulped, and took one last breath, just as she had practiced. But this time, it was all too real. Whispers passed through the crowd like a wave. Poor girl, so young. And then, one clean blow. Blood spilled down the block. Her body collapsed silently, and her head dropped into a straw-lined basket. The crowd exhaled. Some turned away, pale-faced. Others remained, rooted by the brutality, the finality of it. Her body was buried near her cousin Anne Boleyn, in the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula, within the Tower grounds. Now that's something I actually wasn't aware of. Catherine Howard was the daughter of Lord Edmund Howard, who was the brother of Anne Boleyn's mother, Lady Elizabeth Howard. This made them first cousins. 2 queens, 2 executions, 2 cautionary tales of Henry VIII's wrath. But Catherine, she wasn't a schemer, she wasn't ambitious. She was just a girl who was used, discarded, and destroyed by the vicious machine of Tudor politics and the king's paranoia. She died terrified, she died alone, and she died too young. The girl who once danced through courtly life with laughter and flirtation is now one of the most tragic ghosts in English history, and perhaps one of the most heart-wrenching spirits to haunt Hampton Court Palace. To this day, many claim to hear her screams echo through the haunted gallery. It's said that Catherine's spirit has been witnessed running from one end of the gallery to the other, crying and screaming, overcome with desperation and fear before relentlessly banging on the wooden doors pleading for mercy and forgiveness. Another of Henry's former wives said to haunt Hampton Court Palace is Jane Seymour, his third wife, the wife that bore his only son, well, his only legitimate son anyway. The Silver Stick Stairs, built in 1537, are said to be where the beloved Queen, Jane Seymour, died shortly after giving birth to Prince Edward. She's often described as the only wife Henry truly loved, although I'm pretty sure this is only because she gave him a son. Had she given him another daughter, I'm not entirely convinced he would have seen her so adoringly. Each year, around October, the month of Edward's birth, staff and visitors report seeing a pale, candle-bearing figure ascending these stairs. A sorrowful wraith in white, a chilling ghostly visage of Jane herself. Sometimes called the Spectre of the Silver Stick, she flickers like an apparition seeking forgiveness. Some legends say from Anne Boleyn, whose spirit is also said to linger nearby. Imagine this. You've stayed behind after hours. The palace is eerily silent, all except for the quiet ticking of a nearby clock. There's nobody else in sight. You're all alone and isolated. Suddenly you feel like a small child trapped in a nightmare. Your senses are heightened. Your ears prick, and every hair starts to stand on end. You know something isn't right, but what is it? That ticking clock seems louder now. You find yourself at the foot of the Silver Stick staircase. The air has grown cold. You can see your breath in front of your face. And then you hear it. The creak of a floorboard coming from up above, accompanied by soft footsteps. They're moving across the landing above you, bare and measured. You hold your breath and wait as you feel like the whole world is closing in on you. Claustrophobic, you start to sweat and panic. Then the footsteps reach the top of the stairs, and she appears. Pale, almost transparent, gown white as snow, shimmering in the candlelight. She moves down the stairs towards you, but it's unnatural. Her legs don't seem to move, and her feet don't seem to touch the steps. She's gliding down the staircase, slowly, almost too slow. It's her, Jane Seymour. She doesn't look at you. Her eyes are fixed on something far away, maybe from another time. But she continues to descend down the stairs. But then a noise catches your attention, in the distance. For a second you look towards the direction of the sound, before glancing back towards the stairs. And just like that, she's gone, vanished, faded away like she was never there. But she was there. You know what you saw. You weren't the first to see her, and you won't be the last. Many claim to have seen the ghostly apparition of Jane Seymour on those very stairs. Dame Sybil Penn wet nurse to 3 royals, including Edward VI, died of smallpox in 1562. Now known as the Grey Lady, her ghost is said to roam the state apartments and Clock Court. She earned her nickname after church renovations in 1829 disturbed her tomb. Soon after, spectators reported seeing a grey figure in spectral form. But that's not all. Behind a wall in a Grace and Favour apartment, visitors have heard spinning wheel sounds. When explored, they found an old wheel hidden behind bricked-up boards. Spooky coincidence? Maybe. But they say the rhythmic creak of Sybil's wheel still haunts the palace after midnight to this day. I mean, whether you believe in the ghost of Sybil Penn and the legend of the Grey Lady or not, if I was there and I heard that spinning wheel sound, I'd take that as my cue to get the hell out of there. In 2000, psychologist Richard Wiseman conducted a chilling study at Hampton Court. He had believers and hardened skeptics explore the palace and record their experiences. Predictably, believers reported more ghostly encounters. Of course, that's to be expected. However, and this is a big however, the same unnerving sensations, chills, cold spots, whispers and disembodied footsteps were also reported by non-believers in the haunted gallery and Georgian rooms. And we're not talking about people who just weren't sure what to believe. These people were adamant that the existence of ghosts was complete bullshit. Is this proof of the paranormal? No, of course not, but it certainly raises a few questions. Let me know what you think. In 1871, 2 male skeletons in shallow graves were unearthed under a cloister in Hampton Court during a routine excavation. Their discovery brought huge relief to one palace resident, an elderly woman living in a nearby Grace and Favour apartment. Yes, the very same apartments where the spooky wheel sounds were heard. She had complained of constant banging and knocking sounds on her walls, but nobody had ever believed her. Interestingly, all disturbances ceased when the remains were properly interred. It's been suggested that the anonymous men were victims of Roundhead villainy during the English Civil Wars between 1642 and 1651. They may have been hastily buried in unmarked graves, which were concealed during Wren's building of the Baroque Palace in 1689. In December 2003, CCTV captured a startling figure in a long robe-like garment flinging open a fire door. Eyewitnesses reported the apparition lingering over days. Later, skeptics tried to explain it away. iPhone trickery, poor lighting, but eyewitness accounts persisted. Have a look at this. What do you think? Is that genuine footage of a ghost caught on camera? Personally, I'm not convinced. I mean, it just looks like someone dressed up to me. If you watch closely, he even has to correct himself as he closes the wrong door first. So for me, it's a no. But let me know what you think in the comments. So what should you believe? A screaming teenage queen sprinting for her life? A grieving mother queen in spectral candlelight? A nurse's wheel creaking through empty halls? Is this genuine paranormal phenomena, or just the power of suggestion and Tudor architecture? Whatever the truth, Hampton Court offers a sensory journey. Footsteps in the dark, sudden chills, soft sobs in empty corridors, and if you're there late at night, maybe say a polite good evening to Catherine, Jane or Sybil. But maybe don't ask for directions. They're still looking for mercy too. And now it's time for Beyond the Grave. Welcome back to Beyond the Grave, where the dead don't rest, they rant. Today, we're dragging out a trio whose love triangle, or quadrant I suppose, ended up in torture, betrayal, and one seriously pissed off monarch. Let's welcome the ghosts of Queen Catherine Howard, the actual love of her life, Thomas Culpeper, and the human wet fart that is Francis Derham. Hold on to your heads, literally. So, Catherine, love, lies, royal shagging, treason, adultery, multiple lovers, and a royal head in a basket. Thoughts?
Honestly, I regret nothing. I was 17 and married to a festering, rotten, overgrown ham hock in tights. And Thomas here, he made me feel alive, if you get what I mean, unlike Henry, who made me feel nauseous every time he touched me. Literally, I once vomited on my own 2 feet when he entered the bedroom. The stench of him alone could gag a maggot.
We were in love, properly. Secret meetings, sweet letters, and yes, plenty of, Tudor cardio, if you catch my drift. Meanwhile, Henry, the fat twat, was busy shoveling meat pies down his royal gob and scheduling the next execution.
So you weren't feeling the romance then? Henry didn't give you the fanny flutters?
Romance? Henry kissed like a dying trout and shit his bedclothes in his sleep. He smelled like horse shit on a hot, sunny day. He wanted obedience. I wanted someone who could make it to the chamber pot.
Speaking of people who smell like horse shit, Francis Derham, what exactly was your role in this royal shit show?
I was her first true love. We had a pre-contract. That's practically marriage.
We dry-humped behind a curtain, Francis. That's not binding. That's boredom. You were a mistake. Thomas was a fucking revolution.
Besides, you were a sleazy little snitch, turning up at court like, remember me? With your greasy hair and casual threats. By the way, how did that work out for you? Pathetic.
You got me tortured and gutted like a fish. Did you honestly think I was just going to sit there with my intestines in my lap and smile like a good boy? Are you fucking insane?
And honestly, that would have been an improvement on your dry-ass personality.
Let's talk about Henry. You all got wrecked when the big man found out about your dirty little secrets. Was it worth it?
100%. I died for shagging the Queen. That's one hell of a way to go out. I think it makes me a certified G. It most certainly beats dying with gout and loneliness.
I knew I was dead the second Henry's face turned purple. He didn't love me. He owned me. But he couldn't own my heart. That belonged to Thomas. And my last words, I die a queen, but I wish I'd died Culpepper's wife. Stick that up your royal codpiece.
Well,
Shit, that's colder than Henry's marital bed.
well, he had me drawn, hanged, castrated, and disemboweled while still alive. I could literally see my food being digested in my intestines from outside my body.
Maybe you screamed like a whining little bitch because you realised nobody fucking liked you.
You were never part of the love story, Francis. You were the fuckboy. The side piece. The regrettable kebab after a night out.
And yet I was the one who gave the evidence that got you morons executed.
You did get cocky though. You called yourself her husband. A bit dumb that, mate. She doesn't even like you. What on earth were you thinking?
Firstly, I'm not your mate. Secondly, in hindsight, it probably wasn't the wisest of moves on my part.
What a moron. Okay, so surely there must be some regrets.
Regrets? Sure. I regret not slicing off Henry's tiny cocktail sausage and shoving it down his throat before he could have me executed.
I regret dying before Derham for sure. I think I would have quite enjoyed listening to him squeal like a pig as they removed his meat and veg.
I regret ever meeting either of you cursed Tudor twats. I hope you both rot in Tinder hell for eternity.
But let's be real, I presume that we all agree here that Henry was the real villain.
Oh, absolutely. I'd much rather shit in my hands and clap than spend another second with that Jabba the Hutt-looking motherfucker. He was a narcissistic meat mountain with a god complex and a dick that he hasn't seen since 1538.
That fat piece of shit married 6 women because he couldn't handle one who had an opinion. Or a pulse, frankly.
And any final thoughts?
To any young women out there, never marry a bloated monarch out of fear. Find your Culpepper, and if you can't, fake your death and flee to France.
Love is definitely worth dying for. But Derham wouldn't know anything about love, would you, Francis?
Go fuck yourselves, both of you. You too, for that matter, severed soul.
Me? The fuck did I do? There we have it. 3 executions and 1 royal shit show. Ladies and gentlemen, don't cheat. Don't snitch. And whatever you do, never trust a man with a chopping block in his backyard and an executioner on his payroll. This has been Beyond the Grave. I'm your host, Severed Soul. That's all we've got time for today. If you enjoyed this episode, then check this one out right here. Until next time, I'm your host, Severed Soul.